Pick a lane. Like you. You're good. See, let's find my nice guy.
Got that sunshine on my face. I reboot and ride.
I know one of the things I did want to talk about was something that I was listening to a YouTube video by Stewart, and he said you have to put people aren't putting their egos aside when they're on the bike, and story that he was saying about when he was younger and growing up riding and stuff. You wanted to get your next license so you could get the bigger and faster bike. And I know I've talked about this in the past on the channel, where like I ride what I ride and why I like to ride, smaller displacement bikes or the bikes that I have in the garage. Like they just fit for what I want and what I do to enjoy. But putting your ego aside is one of the main things I think a lot of people don't do. And me, like, I don't have an ego. I have a complex, like a Superman complex, because I want to fix everything. I want to help everyone. I want to do everything that I can. If someone's upset, mad, sad, angry, all that jazz, like I want to make sure that they feel better and do better and are better after they, either while I'm at work or if they have a problem and need to talk to me or something like that. Being a manager, I try and be sympathetic and do the best I can to help everyone out. Um, on the flip side of that, I know I've said this in the past too, where I repeat myself is, there's always two sides of the story, and my complex, someone else might have a different view of me just because of the story that I was in their life. So like it's here nor there. You're always going to be the villain in someone's story. So but to get back on the ego track, I know I probably look as ridiculous can be on you know the eliminator because of how I have it set up with being rear sets and cafe racer, and I'm 6'2", pushing 275, 280, and big guy on a little bike. But I have so much fun on Helen here. Like it's not even funny. Like it's so much fun to wind her out. And when I was learning how to ride, like yeah, I thought like I wanted the biggest, the baddest, and the next big thing that I could get my hands on. Like I remember when I had my Sportster, and then immediately, excuse me, went to a rally and hopped on a breakout, 114 breakout that just came out that year, and I was addicted to the throttle. And it was fun, it was exhilarating, it was exciting, and that's what I thought motorcycling was all about. And then from I never got a breakout, thank God. Like, but I always wanted one, and when I went to rallies, I always picked them up and rode them. But from that point, I ended up going. I got my V Rod, I think, right after that rally, and you know, I, I'll be perfectly honest. I shouldn't have gotten the V Rod when I did. I should have kept learning on the Sportster, and I would have been probably on a better learning curve than I was. Um, than I had a trajectory of right now. So, uh, but I mean, you live and learn. You can't really like you can't look back on it. You just have to learn. And it wasn't that I had an ego that I needed to be the biggest or the fastest on the bike, or the bigger the bike the better. Maybe subconsciously that's what it was. But I mean, when you work at the Harley plant, everyone expects you to have the big pouring bagger or the CVO or things like that. And yeah, they're great and they're wonderful to ride, and great for long distance touring and great for what they're built for. But after I had my Ultra, um, I don't want to say the thrill was gone, but like I took the Ultra up to Sturgis with my son during the pandemic, and then I took it on a few other long distance trips. But it, I'm gonna be perfectly frank. Like it's a lot of bike. I mean, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, and everyone knows that it's a lot of bike. And I remember when I first got on one at like the second rally I was ever at, working at in Laughlin, and I actually tipped it over in the parking lot because I didn't know that much weight, and I wasn't prepared for it. So, that being said, like the whole ego thing and the whole putting your ego aside because you think you gotta look big and bad on a fast bike or big and bad on the biggest bike you got, like, that's not me. I'm 42. I don't have anything to prove to anyone other than myself, and I gotta be safe for my family and make sure I get home in one piece and enjoy the bikes that I have, and God willing, get me home back and forth each day. Let's reboot and ride.
My face, leaving worries without a trace. Time to clear